right up to your face.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you sure my hair doesn't look dead?
It's a little dead, yes.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit. Oh, there goes my chair. So it's live.
Whoa, you're higher than me.
Welcome back, Dr. Michela. Can I call you that, or are you going to get in trouble?
Not yet.
Technically not yet. I mean, you are graduate.
Yeah, I am graduated, yes.
Talk right in. Don't be shy.
I am graduated, yes.
Darth Vader. But you're going to do your licensing exam soon.
Yes, currently studying.
Yeah. Good. Mm-hmm. So she didn't want to do Instagram Live. I'm like, it's better, trust me. Maybe no one's watching. It is Rush Hour, which was a good movie, by the way.
Okay.
Before you were born?
I watched it.
I mean, it still exists. Today we're talking about digestion, and not just any kind of digestion. The real stuff. Because I feel like people they know the basics. When patients come in, they're like, I need to work on my digestion. They'll tell me about a probiotic they bought, which usually is garbage. How do you feel about probiotics?
It depends on the circumstance.
See, so it's not an automatic. And to me, it highlights a point that digestion is just not poop.
No.
It's way more than that. Yes. Where does digestion start?
In the mouth. I
think in the eyes. Because when you see the food, you're already thinking, I have to eat soon.
That is true. It stimulates your stomach acid.
Yes, which is important.
Very.
And sorry, I keep stepping on you, but I'm not making you laugh. You're making yourself laugh. Come on, but.
Okay. Physically, it does start in the mouth. It's called mastication, and it's extremely important. And I think this is the biggest step that people actually tend to miss.
Chewing their food.
Yes.
Yes. How many people that swallow their food whole? They're a pelican?
That's not what I meant.
I mean, that's what you said, though.
That's not what I meant.
You mean people underchew?
Yes. They miss it. Mastication, it's proper. You have to chew your food a certain amount of times until it turns into a mush-like substance. That's how you start your digestion. It's most optimal.
Okay. That's fair. That's totally.
No one just swallows their food.
All right. I mean, we were trying to be serious. I mean, it is rush hour. People, they're probably driving home. They want to learn something. And you're talking about chewing your food until it dissolves in your mouth.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So digestion starts with, besides seeing your food, you start to chew and you break it down in your mouth.
Yes.
However, the stomach has, I would say, an even more significant role than all the other digestive organs altogether, because the stomach is where it is supposed to house all the gastric juices, the enzymes, the acid that are supposed to really fast forward the breakdown process of the food that we're eating and also start some of the absorption. Mm-hmm. What are some things that are absorbed at the level of the stomach?
I believe the proteins are actually starting to absorb at the stomach because the stomach releases enzymes that break down the proteins like pepsinogen, and then it turns into pepsin. That's a really big one. People with low stomach acid actually cannot release enough of the pepsin, so they tend to underdigest protein. Now, that's a really big problem that we tend to see because that's where a lot of gas and bloating starts to happen, and people don't understand why they feel so sluggish.
Sure, especially right after a meal.
Yes, right after a meal.
So, do you know what that is in Chinese medicine?
If it's immediately after a meal, it's the stomach. But if it's a little bit delayed, like 45 minutes or so, it's usually the spleen in Chinese medicine.
Yeah. So I like the concept of a stomach yin deficiency, because that yin, that nutritive acid, like the breakdown product, it's just not sufficiently there. And so how we treat, well, at least how I treat it, is with either hydrochloric acid, like a betaine supplement, and or a digestive enzyme. I'm like a broken record. If Michela sat in a lot of my appointments, I put everyone on digestive enzymes because you don't digest. You just don't. Way back in the day, we used to do a few different tests. We used to actually have people swallow a pill that was on a string. it was gross, and then pull it out like a fish. And then we would see like what the litmus, like the color, how much acid was there.
Yep.
Then there used to be the acid challenge where you drink a little bit of lemon juice, and then we would test your pH and like salivary pH every few minutes. And there's supposed to be a curve that represents the rise or decrease in alkalinity or acidity. Nowadays, I have like kind of cooler ways of doing it. I use the in-body, and there I can see if someone's got a lack of protein or muscle mass, because if you're eating protein but not gaining muscle, there's probably a bottleneck in the stomach where the acid is not getting absorbed. The acid is not absorbing the protein.
Mm-hmm. And we see this a lot with patients that come in with iron deficiencies or even anemias.
Sure.
Because they actually don't have enough stomach acid to break down the protein, release some of the iron, absorb some of the iron.
Yeah.
So it's pretty important. The stomach acid is important for digestion of everything. And then along with that, the bile function is also just as important too.
Sure.
So a lot of people tend to come in and they have sluggish bile flow.
How do you know you have sluggish bile flow?
Well, some people actually do get right upper quadrant pain, which is about over here. Some people can tend to radiate towards the shoulder. Some people get burps after they eat. Some people are very constipated as well. So I think that's quite a big one.
Yeah.
Usually when you have sluggish bile flow, if you're thinking about the liver and the gallbladder isn't releasing it properly, and then you're not able to digest and absorb your fats.
Sure. And sometimes the stool might actually float,
yes,
or look like what's it called? Clay? Sometimes. Like your outfit? Michela colored poop? Don't swear, running live. But this color, for example.
Sure.
If you have a stool of this color, it might mean an upper GI bleed, which is actually pretty dangerous. Dark, tarry stool. It's good when because I told Michela, I hate Instagram or TikTok posts where people have like a tray of like plasticine poop. I'm like, it's so childish. I'm like, dress the color. This way it's like, is it more like her or more like me? Poop aside, so a good digestive enzyme that has ox bile in it is a great way to facilitate and get the bile duct open and moving and grooving.
Some things that I actually like to do with some of my patients is implement a digestive bitter. So the thing with the bitter is that because there's lack of enzymes, it doesn't really focus on pancreatic function, but it can start raising the stomach acid, which can further the protein and nutrient absorption, such as iron, B12, and folate. And those are going to be really important for things like energy. And then some of the bitter functions also stimulate the liver as well as the gallbladder release for bile, which is then even more important for fat absorption.
Cool. Okay. So we've kind of introduced the idea of upper digestive function, stimulating and promoting the stomach to do its job using some kind of enzymatic activity. What are some things that maybe are causing an impairment of our digestive function? Like what might be a reason why we don't produce sufficient enzymes or acid?
So stress is going to be a very, very big one, because when you're stressed, your body isn't focusing on resting and digesting. So you actually don't have enough stomach acid to produce, therefore your absorption can be impaired. Sometimes you can even get reflux as well, because the acid is so low that it doesn't stimulate the sphincter at the top to close properly, and then you can start refluxing your food contents and the little acid that's there in the stomach.
She's right, that's a really good answer. Jeez.
Yeah.
Dang, almost fell off my shirt. All right, so you've eaten your food, you chewed your food, you swallowed your food. Now it's going into the small intestine, and now you're bloated. Now what?
Well, it depends what's causing the bloating.
Well, so a lot of people, they'll come in and they're like, I'm always bloated. It used to be just after certain foods like carbs or breads or pastas. But now it's like they wake up flat, and by the end of the day, they feel like they're going to have a baby. So sometimes we're looking at where exactly either timing or abdominally what's being expanded or stretched. Sometimes people have upper digestive, like stomach bloating, which might be from just the food sitting and fermenting and off gassing. Sometimes it's just more of like a permanency where they're like, I just don't feel good. Like it's almost like a diffuse area in the body, and we tend to find that the small intestine is kind of like a hidden kind of organ. It's hard to get at, and people are testing for something called SIBO, or small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And so there's such a unique biome there that it's very common for it to shift in a way that can't self-regulate. And so some of these people need to be like either on an antibiotic or on like some like natural antimicrobials to help normalize that. And we usually identify that through like a pretty comprehensive stool analysis.
Yes. So the thing with SIBO, though, is something called the migrating motility complex, which is what's pushing everything through, tends to get stuck. Now, in times of stress, this migrating complex is actually quite halted, along with very poor bile flow, and then in terms of food sensitivities as well, because your body is just having an inflammatory reaction instead of just pushing everything through like it normally would in a very relaxed state.
Sure.
So SIBO is more of something that's built up over time, and people tend to get bloated up here in the epigastric area. This could also mean low stomach acid as well, which can further contribute to SIBO too. But then if you're looking more down into the intestinal area, we can focus on things like IBS or constipation or even stuck stool against the wall.
Wow. More impressive information.
Thanks.
So let's travel along. And now we get to the appendix.
Yes.
How many people have removed their appendix? Not me. But it happens. A lot of people.
It does.
Is there anything that's like a trigger or something that prompts you to think like maybe this is why this person had an appendix issue?
In terms of digestion?
Yeah.
That I'm not quite sure.
I was looking for bacterial overgrowth,
Yes,
like
'cause
a
it gets stuck in the
dysbiosis or like a lot of antibiotic use.
That is a very, very big thing. So the antibiotic use, it actually does affect your gut flora time after time. And
especially
then
with repeated use.
Repeated use,
Yeah.
yes. Not even that, it can also affect mental health as well. So some studies do say that antibiotic use, even one course or long-term use, can lead to things like anxiety and depression.
I got in a lot of trouble for a post on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but good. It wasn't trouble. It was more people like, that's ridiculous. That there has no correlation.
Well,
I'm
there's
like,
a very big mind-gut connection. So when you start altering the flora in the gut, then obviously it's going to start altering your mentality.
sure. Yes, absolutely. And a lot of people, they've experienced that. They just didn't put their finger on it. They were like, yeah, sure, I was on antibiotics for an infection. Then I went through a bout of depression, but they don't realize that there's probably something that's really interconnected there.
That's why we tend to supplement with probiotics concurrently with the antibiotic or even post-antibiotic, at least just to help restore some of the flora, because antibiotics sometimes are non-selective, meaning that it's just going to pretty much kill everything in there to get the affecting microbe. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're not saying not to do antibiotics, but
they are indicated in many cases. It's just
you know what it is? It's when there's like someone's got we call it dysbiosis. Their biome is all over the place. And let's say they got a UTI and then they take an antibiotic and then they get it again the following month and then the following month.
Yes.
After a while, it's like the antibiotics is clearly not doing it's not solving the problem. It's treating the symptom, but then we've got to like go into like why is the biome off? What are some of the obvious symptoms or influences that could throw off the gut biome besides an antibiotic?
Food is a very big one.
Sure.
So the trans fats, saturated fats, very big food sensitivities, inflammatory foods like gluten, for example, because a lot of people can tend to be intolerant to gluten.
Yep.
So that, and then obviously stress is going to be a very big one as well because of the entire connection, how the vagus nerve is going to be innervating majority of the gut.
Sugar.
Yeah, well that...
Did you say sugar?
No, that went with food sensitivities.
Really?
Yes.
I think sugar should stand on its own.
That is another thing as well. But even...
Just because you like sugar. She eats tons of sugar. Sugarholic.
Literally don't do Who said I did that?
Well, I don't know. You didn't bring it up, so I'm figuring you're covering up for something. Don't say sugar. Don't say sugar. Oh, sugar.
I'm not trying to make this about myself.
All right. So sugar is obviously my top of the list because
sugar is a big one. Yes.
It's not unanimous, but it's okay. All right. So we are working our way through the intestinal tract. Now we're at the large intestine. Take it away, Susan.
What about the large intestine?
What
would
about
you like
it?
to know? this is where a lot of the water tends to get reabsorbed. There's electrolytes being flushed through. The stool is held there until a bowel movement is ready.
Sure. I'm trying to think of like conditions specific to the large intestine, like diverticulitis, for example. That's a big one. IBS, inflammatory bowel. So a lot of people will come in with like a type of colitis, and they're like, you know, I'm on my medication, my what's it called, immune suppressant type of thing. Yep. Automatically, I'm looking at food sensitivity.
That is a big one.
Yeah, because I mean, I've definitely seen that if you adhere to avoiding food sensitivities, you really reduce your risk of like a recurrence of your like colitis or Crohn's, like a flare up. So my patients, when they do really well and they don't have flare ups, they're on their sensitivity specific diet. So that's my commercial.
Diet for IBD is definitely very, very big. It's also depending on like which type of IBD that you're having. So Crohn's versus ulcerative colitis, because ulcerative colitis tends to be a lot more localized towards the end of the digestive tract, like the rectum and the lower large intestine, whereas Crohn's can be anywhere. But the food sensitivities are big because you're already looking at an autoimmune picture. Sure. The gut is most likely leaky. You're going to have the lesions depending on which type of IBD that you do have. So the further that you aggravate, the further the immune response that you're going to get, and then the body's not going to start to heal properly. So you basically need to remove the offending triggers along with implementing gut repair supplements. So L-glutamine is going to be a good one. Theracumin is going to be a good one. Things like Althea, which is marshmallow. That's another big one.
I love marshmallow.
Marshmallow is a good one.
Marshmallow, the root.
Yeah, not the s'more.
Not the s'more.
Not the s'more.
And licorice too.
Licorice
not
is a
the
good
Twizzlers.
one. No, but the only thing with licorice is the blood pressure.
Yes.
That's the only thing. Yes.
So
marshmallow is the way to go.
Well, you jumped into it, which is perfect, because I was going to ask about like what are some supplements or herbs that are great for healing the gut.
Yes.
Back to the stomach, zinc carnosine.
That is a very big one. We tend to use that in cases of H. pylori to prevent ulceration and start healing the actual stomach lining.
Can you catch H. pylori from someone?
Yes, especially through sharing utensils, sharing straws, sharing drinks, kissing as well. It is contagious through those ways. So
can you get H. pylori without getting it from somebody?
Yes.
It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
I know.
Like City TV.
Yeah. Well, it's part of our digestive tract. It's just.
So so there's a huge line. You guys don't see it, but I'm on the side of the fence that I think we propagate infection. She thinks germ theory.
Okay, then explain your side.
So I'm happy to. Thanks for offering me that opportunity.
Okay.
So if you have chronic gastritis, which is the inflammation of the stomach lining, you're changing the net pH and also depleting the mucus lining, which is actually preventing the overgrowth of a lot of these ubiquitous bacteria, like H. pylori, for example. And then you are more predisposed to having an overproduction of them, which eventually leads to the level where they're detected as an infection.
But that's what I was saying.
You said you can get it from kissing. You're such a perv. Who cares about that? Or forks or spit.
Because it's contagious.
That's why I don't associate with anyone. I just eat my food in my office by myself.
Okay, well, that's literally not what I was saying. I was saying that it is already in our digestive tract. The overgrowth piece of what you were saying was how someone can acquire it. Aside from that, it could also be contagious.
Tomato.
Stomach acid levels too.
Absolutely.
So if
you just repeated what I didn't say.
From someone else, and you don't have the proper stomach acid to fight something off.
Zinc carnosine. That's why I brought this up. Zinc carnosine is fantastic to repair this. Maybe to repair our friendship.
Okay. Done after.
It's fine. I got tons of zinc carnosine. What else did you want to talk about? Since it's your idea.
This is your idea.
Okay,
every time I bring something up, there's a problem.
No, I thought it was fantastic. I've been commending you. You're doing a great job.
Okay. Well, why don't we talk about constipation? Because I think that's one of the biggest things that people tend to come in for.
You. Constipation. So how do you solve constipation?
Well, it depends what the root cause of the constipation is.
Hard poop.
Yes, but Stress is a very big one.
Everyone says everyone gets so mad. We say stress and we say liver. Everything's stress and liver.
Well, it could be more than that. Stress in terms of tightening the muscles, tightening the sphincters, not actually allowing yourself to go, slowing the rest and digest process so you're more in a sympathetic tone. That's one way of constipation.
Exercise, movement.
Yes, I was
water.
Getting there.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was just your show. I can't contribute.
The biggest one. So in terms of constipation, we tend to follow therapeutic order. So we look, is one consuming enough water? Is one consuming enough fiber? Do they have a well-balanced diet? Are they eating enough calories?
Do they have any friends? What if someone has all those things, but it's their time of the month?
Well, hormones, especially progesterone, it's a more drying hormone. So that can lead to premenstrual constipation as well. We do see that quite often.
How about alcohol?
Alcohol is another big one because it's drying. It affects liver function.
How about
bowel
steak?
Function. Steak. What about steak?
I don't know.
Why? Because
I'm
you
just
eat
trying
steak all the time?
Yeah. Just trying to figure if that's the reason why.
Okay.
Well, how do you treat constipation outside of like taking away all the good stuff?
Well, it depends. So
fiber
is a good one, but I was even going to say pelvic floor therapy.
Wow, that's pretty extreme. I would be like,
just reach, but it is actually quite helpful, especially for those people that tend to be very tense, and that's the root cause of their constipation.
Like maybe chronic constipation. People who are like,
yeah,
I've been constipated my whole life.
Yeah.
You can tell they always wear turtlenecks and stuff.
Yeah, but even routine, how much one is actually consuming per day. So a lot of the times when people tend to underconsume calories, they don't have enough food to actually form a bowel movement, and then they get constipated that way.
Sure.
So eating enough is actually one of the main reasons. Yeah.
So now we chewed our food, it went through our intestines, and we pooped it out.
Okay. Now what?
The day's done.
Okay.
We did our job. I think that this was obviously a crash course on digestion, and we try to highlight some things that are maybe poorly understood. We had a little fun at the same time. Any parting shots when it comes to like, this is something that people need to know about their gut?
In terms of what?
I'll take anything at this point.
Anything. I think everything, or most things we'll say, does start from the gut. And you have to take very good care of it in terms of your diet and your lifestyle. Okay,
so to expand on that, I'd say I think we underestimate how important it is to have consistency in our diet. Because sometimes we'll be like, I'll just eat whatever. I was in a hurry. I grabbed something. I went through the drive-through. I skipped a meal. Each of these individual instances don't seem significant, but when you're trying to have, a healthy body composition, not feel bloated, have some energy, be nutritionally sound, these little hiccups and obstacles and bad habits, they actually have a very profound, cumulative effect where before you know it, you're like, my stomach's just not right. I don't know what's going on. I've been off for a while, and it kind of creeps up on you. So, be mindful. Like, these are not things that you'd be like, yeah, these guys are a little bit too particular. It's like, no, actually, I'm not particular. You're just unparticular.
That's actually, you brought up a good point, though, in terms of diets and drive-thrus and things like that. So we do tend to see a lot of blood sugar dysregulation from little quick fixes in the diet. And then that in itself leads to your energy crashes throughout the day. It can lead to an inflammatory response as well. It can shut down the immune system sometimes, depending on the extent and the duration of what you're actually doing. So I think that in itself is actually another big thing too. We see that contributing to skin conditions like acne and eczema and things like that. So that was a good point.
Thank you.
That was a good point.
For me, I'm going to go home. I'm going to have a nice dinner. Where are you going to go?
To dinner.
No, she's not. I know where she's going. She's going to be a... She's not having dinner. I'm going to go home and have a healthy dinner.
Okay.
I don't know where she's going. Thank you, Dr. Michela. I'll say it until Kono makes me stop. And we'll be back in the future, I hope. See you guys.